Imagine hiring a singer at a drunken pub session and building a Stonehenge replica so massive it can't fit through the venue doors, and maybe, just maybe, turning down Michael Bolton. That's not a parody. That's the true story of the strangest album Black Sabbath ever made, 1983's Born Again. By late 1982, Black Sabbath was riding high. Ronnie James Dio had rescued the band from the Ozzy years, delivered Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, and turned Sabbath into a genuine commercial force again. But behind the scenes, the band was quietly falling apart. The breaking point came during the mixing sessions for the band's first official live album, Live Evil. A studio engineer told guitarist Tony Iommi and bassist Geezer Butler something explosive: that Dio and drummer Vinny Appice had allegedly been sneaking into the studio at night to boost the volume of the vocals and drums on the master tapes, essentially remixing themselves louder behind the other members' backs. Dio denied it completely, but the accusation alone was enough to poison the room. Add a brutal touring schedule and heavy substance abuse across the band, and what started as studio paranoia curdled into total mistrust. It wasn't just about volume faders, though. There was real power struggles underneath. Dio wanted 50% cut the publishing, a huge break from Iommi and Butler's long-standing even split. And he also wanted royalties for performing Ozzy-era classics live. On top of that, Dio was a trained musician who took full control of lyrics and vocal melodies, which shifted creative power away from the two men who'd always run the band. Resentment built fast. Feeling disrespected and pushed out, Dio quit before Live Evil even hit shelves. And he didn't leave alone. He took Vinny Appice with him, formed his own band, and released Holy Diver the very next year. One of the greatest rock breakups in history, had just produced one of metal's greatest debut albums, but also left Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler with no singer, no drummer, and no direction. Sabbath's management needed a big name fast to keep the band commercially afloat. Robert Plant and David Coverdale were both approached and both said no. A handful of lesser-known singers were auditioned, but none had the star power the band needed. Then attention turned to Deep Purple's Ian Gillan. His own project, a band named Gillan, had just dissolved, and he'd been telling anyone who listened that his voice needed a rest. On paper, he was available. In practice, he wasn't remotely looking for this job. So how did it actually happen? Not through an audition, through a pub. Manager Don Arden, and yes, Sharon Osbourne's father, arranged a night of drinks at a pub in Oxfordshire, bringing together Gillan, Iommi, and Butler. Gillan walked in, convinced he was completely wrong for Sabbath's doom-laden sound. He walked out after a genuinely enormous amount of alcohol, having apparently agreed to join the band. By next morning, his own manager was the one informing him he was already legally done. But here's a twist almost nobody remembers. This lineup was never supposed to be called Black Sabbath. Iommi, Butler, and Gillan wanted to launch this as a brand new supergroup under its own name. The record label and Don Arden overruled them. The Black Sabbath name meant guaranteed sales and guaranteed tour bookings. And that's why the name stuck, whether material actually sounded like Black Sabbath or not. With original drummer Bill Ward briefly returning to the fold, this accidental, mismatched lineup went into the studio and recorded Born Again in 1983. Now here's part of the story that sounds completely made up. Michael Bolton, yes, that Michael Bolton, the soft rock ballad king, actually auditioned to be the singer of Black Sabbath. Before the perms and the power ballads, Bolton performed under his real name, Michael Bolton, fronting a hard rock band called Blackjack. This band, Blackjack, was heavy enough to open for Ozzy Osbourne on tour, which meant Sabbath's camp already knew exactly who he was and what he could do vocally. When Ronnie James Dio quit, submission tapes flooded in from singers all over the world, and Bolton's was reportedly one of them. Tony Iommi has confirmed in interviews that Bolton came in, tried out, and left a genuinely strong impression. The band just couldn't settle on a decision fast enough with so many singers in the mix, and the search dragged on until Gillan entered the picture. Bolton himself has repeatedly waved this off as nothing more than an urban legend. Take that denial however you like. Maybe his team submitted a tape without him fully realizing how far it went, or maybe once it became a mainstream superstar, distancing his image from Black Sabbath's demonic album covers made a lot of business sense. Either way, one of rock's great what-if footnotes, a world where Michael Bolton might have fronted Black Sabbath. Let me talk about the songs. Now, this might not be the best Black Sabbath album, but over the years, Born Again has achieved a cult status among heavy metal fans, with artists like Lars Ulrich of Metallica and Max Cavalera of Sepultura citing it as a major influence. So let's talk about some key tracks. Trashed opens the album with lots of speed. Ian Gillan's lyrics tell the true story of a night he got drunk and crashed Bill Ward's Ford Granada into a canal on the studio grounds. Also features one of Tony Iommi's most memorable guitar riffs. Zero to Hero is the musical centerpiece of the album. It features a heavy, chugging, down-tuned riff, heavily influenced 1980s metal. Some even say it was copied by Guns N' Roses for Paradise City. Disturbing the Priest is a dark, unsettling track. It was written while the band was rehearsing near a local church in Oxfordshire. The priest complained about the noise, prompting Gillan to write the lyrics, mocking them, complete with unhinged, high-pitched, maniacal laughter. Born Again is a slow, bluesy, and melancholic doom metal ballad. It serves as a showcase for Gillan's incredible vocal range, shifting effortlessly from melodic crooning to powerful screams. And there's Hotline, a high-energy heavy metal track showing the unique chemistry between Tony Iommi's driving guitar rhythm and Gillan's traditional classic rock vocal delivery. If the album's backstory was chaotic, the Born Again tour was somehow even worse. Chaotic enough, that is why they cited it as an inspiration for This Is Spinal Tap. The centerpiece disaster was a stage set. Management ordered a giant Stonehenge replica to match the album's instrumental track, except the measurements were drawn up in meters instead of feet. The crew built the props at true full-scale size. Stone columns were so enormous they couldn't fit through standard arena doors, blocked the audience's view when they did, and forced several shows to be canceled outright because venues couldn't structurally support the weight. There was also supposedly a dwarf they had used on stage to look like the baby on the cover. I couldn't find any pictures of it, but I know it was parodied in the movie Spinal Tap, which is the video I'm showing right here. Musically, things weren't much smoother. Ian Gillan never fully committed Ozzy and Dio's odd lyrics to memory. He kept a lyric scrapbook on the floor behind his monitors, which meant that between the dry ice fog and the handwritten cheat sheets, he often spent shows on his hands and knees, waving smoke away just to read the words. At the reading festival, Iommi spontaneously launched into the riff from Deep Purple's most famous song mid-set, and it became a recurring bit, earning the band the mocking nickname Deep Sabbath from the British press. The lineup kept crumbling too. Bill Ward recorded the album but relapsed and couldn't handle the tour, so he was replaced last minute by Bev Bevan of ELO, a polished pop rock drummer who felt completely out of place behind the Black Sabbath sound. Gillan later called the whole year the longest party he'd ever been to. He quit the moment the tour ended in March 1984, immediately heading off to reform the classic Deep Purple lineup. Geezer Butler quit too, leaving Tony Iommi as the last man standing, holding Black Sabbath name together into the mid-1980s. And that night, the pub hire, the one that left Sabbath clutching a lyric scrapbook in the smoke, he didn't walk away from rock. He walked straight back to the band that made him famous. So next time, in the Deep Purple family tree, first we're going to Whitesnake, where they reinvent themselves with Slide It In, but then circling back to Deep Purple with Ian Gillan reuniting with Richie Blackmore in October 1984. The classic lineup delivers one of their greatest albums, in my opinion at least, Perfect Strangers. That's coming up. Check out the playlist, should be on the screen right now. It has all of the episodes in the Deep Purple story. And thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.